Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Sunday night breakdown. Daniel Ratledge and Dave Forrester, as ever on a Monday night, to go
Yeah.
through all of the action in Super League basketball. This week, obviously, Dave, we talked about Caledonia and something not being right. This week, they made an announcement. Gareth Murray will, quote, move from his role as men's head coach to undertake a new position in the club's high performance program. Assistant head coach Luis Riera will oversee the duties as interim head coach. Now, obviously, in February, they appointed Miguel Ortega as the head of basketball, which included, and I quote, initial engagement with young players and the steering of the strategic direction and operations of the professional teams. Now, I think when that came out, your natural reaction is to think that Garrett's leash was shorter than it might otherwise been, because whenever you get a head of or a GM or director of or somebody who comes in who hasn't appointed the coach, you feel like there's less wiggle room. And obviously, they're in FIBA Europe Cup, and we don't know what their budget is, but traditionally, FIBA Europe Cup teams in this country tend to be at or near the top in terms of spending because you need a certain level of pressure. So with all of that in the background, starting 3-8 obviously put him under pressure. And whilst it's unusual in SLB BBL terms to change a coach uh, mid-season, given all of that context, it was probably less of a surprise. I'd say
Yeah,
unusual for a
I
coach to
think that's
change.
fair. I mean, Nostradamus here kind of got it.
Yeah, yeah.
Got
What I
it.
would say is it's unusual for coaches to change in British basketball based on results.
Well,
There's a
that's right. And
number
I
of
mean,
big changes for other reasons.
there are arguments to and fro about that, aren't there, as well? That is something of a sinecure at times, and there are no. And it's primarily, I've talked about it before. It's primarily because there are so many competitions. You have so much chance to win. You can
Mm,
get to a final, and everybody thinks you've had a good year when you might have lost more than half your games.
yeah.
So.
You can finish below 500 in the league and win the double.
Yeah, exactly. What a season. Exactly. So it gives everybody a lot of chance to win, and given that there's a limited amount of teams and generally a degree of parity, it's very difficult to be so bad that you don't last, if I can put it that way. Um, the whole thing is just a mess, isn't it? I mean, to cut to the absolute chase without being rude to anybody, they have over-administrated themselves into nonsense. They have appointed a basketball director, as you say, in February, kept the same head coach, allowed him, one assumes, to recruit the team, brought in under him a Spanish assistant coach who I'm not aware that he had any previous dealings with. I might be wrong. There may be I've never not read anything about any kind of previous relationship between them. And then ended up appointing that assistant coach as the head coach and putting the head coach back into the development program, which will be run by the basketball director. That's, shuffling deck chairs doesn't come close. It really doesn't. And then, I mean, the chaos of it all is best exemplified by the fact that, they brought in a new point guard this week.
Yeah,
We're
yeah,
not
yeah.
sure who, we're not even sure who bought him in. Was it the new guy? Was it the old coach or the new coach?
Mm,
Um, what level of arrangement was there? And particularly when they've, to be frank, not really brought in a guy that is the type of player that I really think they need.
mm,
Um, so the whole thing just seems to have been kind of circling the drain for the past 3 or 4 weeks.
mm.
You can see it in when teams are losing, you always look for things that you can see in the way that's wrong because they're losing, so it's self-perpetuating.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think, even looking out for confirmation bias, I think you could probably see that you could see, a degree of fatalism in the players.
Mm,
I mean, we'll talk about the games, but on Friday you had 11 players playing the first 8 minutes.
mm.
And the last numbers 10 and 11 on the bench were Onwas and Ali Hodzic, who are
Yeah.
basically your main guy. You're kind of your ballast, your experienced pros. And they just don't seem to know whether they are coming or going.
Mm.
Um, And I'm not sure. I mean, obviously, Luis Vieira gets an opportunity if he meets all the standards that's necessary for GB basketball for foreign coaches,
Mm.
because it's not an easy gig to get that. There's quite a number of
Yeah, yeah.
requirements. But let's be clear. I mean, he's a career assistant coach.
Mm.
He's had one season as a head coach in Estonia. Now he's been an assistant coach at some pretty high level places.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm not in any way denigrating him or whatever, but to be kind of thrown into a league which is as unique as the BBL or the SLB. I mean, it is a unique league, and there's a reason, to be honest, that it's been very hard for new coaches to come into the league
Yeah.
because there's a lot of kind of learned knowledge which isn't necessarily how you would run a basketball club in other places.
Mm.
But you have to, so basically the way into the league has historically been through either a playing career
Yeah.
turning into a coach. So that's, Atiba, Rob, Fab, etc. Um, a kind of a local boy
Hmm.
coach, a local boy kind of coming up, which if you look at it at the moment, that would be Gareth, who played, obviously, that'd be Bennett, Cheshire.
Hmm.
Um, Andreas count as a local boy.
Yeah,
No,
yeah,
because
yeah.
and even Lloyd is really a
Even
local boy.
Lloyd, you could
No,
argue.
you'd count as kind of local to that area and has built basketball in the area.
Mm.
So it's like almost a sinecure appointment. You've got
There's
it because
there's
of
a
the
lot
work you've
more of
done.
those types of people than there are of the Schmidts or the Bozic's in the history of British
Absolutely. And I mean,
basketball.
if you look at the guys who've kind of come in for a year, they've generally failed. I'm not being, it's harsh because that's why they've only been there for a year, I suppose.
Mm.
But you look at Simonian last year, you look at the guy at Worcester a few years ago, Ty Shaw,
Mm.
came in for a year from America and just blew, they were like 2-30 or something like that.
Mm.
It is just a different world in relation to some of the stuff that you have to handle. And so I fear for them at the moment. I think they are in kind of,
Are we breaking out Dave Spiral watch? We
they
haven't
are
had that for a
beyond.
few years.
I was going to say they're beyond spiral watch. They are
Okay.
spiraling,
Yeah.
and at the moment, they have too many players of who have limited investment in what's going on, and that comes because you have too many players.
Mm.
If you're playing 10 or 12 minutes a game, you're losing. It's not your fault if you're a player. They all think I was playing more, we'd be winning.
Yeah.
And they
Some
got
of
to
them are
make
not
some.
playing 10 or 12 minutes either.
Yeah, exactly. Well, maybe one game and not the other game.
Mm.
So almost played four against Newcastle.
Yeah.
And so, and by the way, credit to him for getting his degree. So, so there's plus and minuses, it's not all about basketball. But they need urgent surgery.
Mm.
And it needs to be, to save this season, it needs to be quite substantial. And it's not just changing a point guard.
Mm.
They have to work out who's going to be on the court for them and who's not, and they got to work out whether the guys that they've got at this point are they're going to ride with the whole season because now is the time. They can't afford to lose another 2 weeks of the kind of the rot setting in because then it will be too late.
Mm.
So the question I think for them will be how bold is the new coach,
Mm.
and how far gone mentally is the team, and which one of the which are the core pieces, the core guys that you're going to build around,
Mm.
and it may not be kind of the sexy pick, but for me, it's Onwas and it's Ali Hodzic and it's the pros who've been around there. And I don't know what's going on in the locker room, and it's Whelan, obviously. I don't know what's going on in the locker room. I don't know um, kind of what influences are at play there. That's for the coach. So that's just guesswork. But they need some solidity and they need some people who are focused on knowing what they have to do because just throwing guys out there willy-nilly, 11 guys in a quarter, I don't see how it's going to help them.
Mm. Let's go straight
Yeah.
into the game because they're the first game. London Lions 98, Caledonia Gladiators 76. There was no Taylor for London. Flood and Goodwin were back. You mentioned Thomas coming in, DeBose leaving. Um, uh, Ortega was on the bench. I didn't see Darrell Wood. I didn't look to see if he was there on Sunday or whether he's moved on to something else as well. I don't know.
I'll be surprised if he was still there in those circumstances. I'll be honest. I just think that very different, very difficult for an assistant coach to kind of sit there once to continue as an assistant coach once the guy you've been working with has been turfed out.
Mm. Uh, so very beard light on the Caledonia
Very
bench
beard
now.
light, yeah.
Yeah,
They've gone all metrosexual with the
yeah.
olive oil and all that stuff, haven't they? Is that what,
Um,
face oil, whatever it is? You
yeah,
tell me.
so I have no idea. So I'm moving on to Hadzibegovic with six in a row. It's a 13-5 London lead. It was double figures before the end of the first quarter. And to be honest with you, it never really
It
looked like
was
coming down.
as routine a win as there's going to be in the Super League basketball this year.
Mm,
It was as routine a win. As I say, I mean, I talk more about Caledonia. I'll leave London to the kind of the second game because that's probably got a bit more interesting stuff in it
mm,
about London. Um, but as I say, he played 11 guys in the first quarter, and it's it's a great idea, and it's the way that basketball is certainly played in certain countries.
mm,
But the difficulty in doing it in this country is that the disparity in talent between 1 and 11 is
mm.
generally greater than it is in some of the higher paid leagues in Europe.
Yeah.
When we won 11, I mean, your number one guy and your number 11 guy. And the difficulty Caledonia have got is that every single player in that team has shown something this year,
Mm.
right? They've all been guys who at times you thought, oh yeah, he needs to be on the floor. But more than that, there have been times where you thought he doesn't need to be on the
Yeah,
floor.
yeah, yeah.
So effectively, they are players who, at this point, I'm not putting all of them in the same thing, in the same batch here, because you'd have to go through them individually. And obviously, I'd take Whelan out of everything because he's
Mm,
consistently good. But they are guys who are good enough to lose you your job as a
mm.
coach.
Yeah,
Basically, they're good enough to get on the court, but they're not helping you win.
yeah, yeah.
So you
Well,
got,
they're good enough to beat Ludwigsburg and lose to Surrey.
yeah. I mean, I think we
Without,
both.
I'm not. I picked Surrey because I'm trying to think of the disparity between Ludwigsburg and Surrey's budget rather
Yeah, I
than.
get that, and I do think there's a danger that there's, as I say, there's a little fool's gold in the Ludwigsburg thing. I do. I mean, I'm not knocking the fact that they beat a BBL team, they beat a Bundesliga team. I know Patrick put them on their back, and we know Patrick can do that. I also know that ultimately they weren't going to qualify ahead of Ludwigsburg because Ludwigsburg just had to avoid by 30. So I don't know who they had on the court at the end either. And I also know that players are going to play at their highest level when there are teams from higher paying leagues playing
Mm,
against them.
yeah, yeah.
That's the reality of it. And that depends on the internal motivations you've got within the camp and the internal
Mm,
motivations you've got from the coaching and the players. But if it's basically just the players raising themselves because it's good for their career or prospects, and let's be fair, Trayvon Bonds had 27 against the Pro A team in
yeah,
France,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
then couldn't make a shot against Surrey.
Mm,
So that tends to suggest to me that they're operating kind of not selfishly, but independently of kind of group motivations
mm,
in the way that they're able to do. They haven't got a target motivation. So you throw all that out there, then having 11 players, all of whom have shown you something, and one of them's a new player, obviously in Tomzik, so that's 10 plus 11. You've got to, if you're a new coach, you've got to give them a shot.
mm,
But you should have already decided, who's going to be playing and who's not going to be playing.
mm,
Because you're not going to be able, that's what Bozic did his first 6 weeks.
mm,
He worked out which young kids could get on the court and which young kids couldn't. And what you then don't do is you don't bring in somebody who duplicates what you've already got.
mm.
So if Kyle Jimenez is going to be playing 15 minutes, 20 minutes a game for you, and he's been playing very well, you bring in Nick Tomzik, he's basically Kyle Jimenez with 5 years of experience,
Yeah, yeah.
probably a better shooter at this point in time, a better team leader, but he's not going to
The
help you in the way that the
interesting
post is.
the interesting thing on this is the one of the stats that I pulled out from this was the points in the paint, 60 to 24, which is the biggest differential of the season. And of the 5 games where a team has been outscored by 28 plus in the paint, it's been Caledonia 3 times. Only Leicester against Bristol has gone on to win the game from that position. And that sort of sent me into a bit of, I was watching on Synergy, so I went into a bit of a Synergy rabbit hole. And actually, the jump shots in this game was 45 to Caledonia, 23 to London. And the push ball was 29 to Caledonia and 41. Push ball is essentially going quick, transition
Yeah.
sort of thing. And it's that to the rim sort of stuff that we talked about. Points in the paint is not necessarily your big guy with his back to the basket. It's your guards
Absolutely.
getting
No,
out in
that's right.
transition. It's your wings attacking in the half court. And I actually, because Tomsic was new, and I only vaguely remembered him from his
Yeah.
Plymouth days, I started looking at his numbers, and based on his shot types in the last 2 or 3 seasons, he's not a to the rim guy.
No.
He's a catch and shoot jump shot guy,
I think you
and
can
their
see that from the way he
problems,
played.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
their
And you're
problem
right.
is they're not getting any points in the paint. So
And you're right. It's absolutely counterintuitive. And because they are probably outside of London, probably inclusive of London when you include Theo Hughes, Faro, Trayvon Barnes, they're probably the biggest team in the league.
yeah, yeah,
Bentley is 6'8" on the wing, Malcolm 6'7". But it's about quickness.
mm.
Ever since that first game at Newcastle, which was probably the best they've played against Newcastle, they couldn't keep them off the foul line. They didn't have enough quickness on the perimeter.
And you
Uh,
would argue outside of Whelan, their next best, likeliest to sort of get to the rim guy was DeBose.
But yeah, absolutely. He was absolutely
Yeah,
necessary for
yeah,
that
yeah,
team.
yeah.
He's obviously they've released him, but I struggle to believe, you don't release a guy who had 16, 5, and 4 last year,
Mm,
played the whole season until he got injured, was basically one of the best guys in the league. He might have been in the top 10. I can't remember if he got an All-Star or not. But you don't release a guy like that because he can't play anymore.
mm,
You release him because there's stuff going on.
mm,
And if he's a bad guy, you don't bring him back in the first place.
mm.
So he's not a bad guy.
Yeah,
You
so
know what I
must
mean?
have been an
So
injury.
that's because the whole thing is corroded from the inside.
Mm,
Um, so yeah, I just think that yeah, my rule for them is that they just got to go. They got to find their eight guys. They got to play their eight guys.
mm, mm,
And if they need a couple of new, and I do think that playing the way that they're playing and playing with the personnel they're playing with at the moment, um, is not something which is suited to our league. And unless they reconfigure their style entirely around that personnel, they're going to struggle.
mm.
Now, the question is, whose personnel is it? Was it the general manager who brought that? Was it the coach? Was it Gareth who brought that team in? If it was the general manager who brought that team and was his job to get his new coach to figure out to bring him with what team. If it's Gareth that brought that team in, well, what's the general manager doing? And B, why are you sacking Gareth?
Just to clarify, they have both a general manager and a head of basketball.
Sorry, well,
So
there you go.
two different
Well,
roles.
dear me. The one thing about that building is there must be plenty of officers.
Mm, mm,
So yeah, so there's, it's all great on one of these kind of charts, there's pyramid charts of building continental systems and all of that stuff. And it may well be the best way. I'm not saying it's not, if operated in a way which is kind of conducive to everybody kind of understanding their roles. It might be the way forward for British basketball. But in British basketball history, successful teams have been run by benevolent dictators.
mm. Yeah, yeah.
That's the reality of it. And you can go back to, no one's picking Finch's team from, no one's picking this. Nurses, recruiting people from Nigeria or from, Disney World or whatever, and then you move on to Tony G's the same,
Mm,
and Robbie Pierce, he's getting his six guys, and then you get into Fab and Rob. These guys this is the Ferguson thing.
yeah, yeah.
There's one person in charge,
Mm,
and it's yet to kind of percolate down to results that you can have kind of this setup which just allows everybody to do everything.
mm,
It's total. It is effectively it's a total Fag Bentley kind of paradigm in reality, which is 6'8", long arms, has the ability, has the athletic ability to be anything he wants, but he's 24 years old, hasn't really played on the wing before, and you're trying to make him into something on the run
mm,
because that would be a heck of a way of developing a player. The problem is he's going to have his lumps on the run. He's
mm,
going to have to take all the turnovers and groove his jump shot and all that stuff. And in the meantime, you're losing.
mm,
You're losing the minutes he's playing. So do you keep going with that? And this is our development structure. This is where we're going to bring guys on, and get all the happy claps on the internet, or
mm.
do you win some games?
Yeah, yeah,
Well, the
yeah,
fans don't really know the difference. So the fans want the games to be won. They just see the record.
yeah.
And I'm not saying it's wrong to be doing what they're doing with Toto.
Mm,
I'm just or Obviously, because they've developed Jimenez and Fraser as well, Fraser Malcolm as well. I'm not saying it's wrong, but I'm saying it makes it bloody hard if you've got 11
Yeah,
players,
yeah.
and you bring an American in like Onwas in, and then Fabendi's coming and taking over. And Onwas is looking at Van Begley thinking, well, he hasn't made a shot yet, or he ain't helping the team, why aren't I playing?
Mm.
It's a battle. So very few prescriptions for them. I'm talking about them a lot because I don't want to talk about them in
We'll
relation
we'll
to
we'll
the
come
game.
to London anyway,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
they're the story in reality. And as you say, is what can you say about a routine win? Not a lot. Delaire 21 points, 10 rebounds. Brisker 20, Adebayo 15, Stuckman 16, Tomsic 12, Whelan 10. Whelan, by the way, had an index rating of 1 in this game. He's only once had a lower rating than that in his career in this country, and that was his first game where he was a minus 2 against
And
Bristol on debut. He
here's the
had
problem.
another. He had another in the playoff final. He had a 1 against London, but that was the game where London, if you remember, took Whelan and Loving out of the game, but
Yeah.
Crandall still won it for Leicester.
But if, I mean, here's the thing. Here's why that happens because DeBose ain't there.
Mm,
Happens because every single team is zeroing in on him.
mm,
So you're having your best defender be Adebayo or with Okaro on Sunday. You're having your best defender zoning in on him. So he is getting nothing easy.
mm,
And he's got a kind of a rotating cast of teammates. So there's very little in the way of kind of continuity
mm,
amongst the group, which will help him, get some easy ones, which will help him get going again.
mm,
It's a team thing, but then it impacts on individuals.
mm,
And yeah, I mean, Delaire, I'll have a word for Delaire. I mean, he can rebound the ball,
mm.
and he scores inside. And he's still, as you said on Sunday, he's single figure shooting. I think he was 1 of 21 last time I looked from three. But he scores the ball, and and he is um, so long that he can rebound. He's probably the longest player in the league, I would think, in relation to 6'10", ability to kind of catch the ball and finish. So, he's showing up whether coming off the bench or not. There's also a story in the Jordan Taylor thing, but we'll catch up with that later.
Okay. Newcastle Eagles 81, sorry, 89 to 77. Josh Ward Hibbett back, Lawrence back. Adelican a couple of early fouls, but Steele and Hunt scoring. So Surrey jumped out to a 6-14 lead. They do start games well, Surrey.
They absolutely diced Newcastle in the first half. 18, I think 18 field goals, 17 assists. They just diced them to bits. I mean, it was probably the worst defensive half Newcastle have had. Um, and to be honest, it would have been worse if Hunt hadn't kind of come out with a 2 minute mark in the first quarter with the Delican on two fouls. Lloyd went to Bacali for 3 minutes and he was a -7 because he doesn't play the same way the rest of them do. He's a
Yeah.
big guy, plays inside, and he was taking up the space, turned it over, travelled once, missed a shot, whatever. So Newcastle kind of got back into it in those minutes. Outside of those 3 minutes with Bacali, they just picked them apart.
Mm.
And
Well,
I
they had.
understand why, because their spacing is really good. And with Hunter there, particularly, and he made a couple of threes, and Delpesh got nowhere near him on the stretch. When he's acting as a stretch five man, that kind of gave them the opportunity to get to the rim because Newcastle weren't able to defend the threes and the rim.
Well, Long made a couple of threes, put Newcastle 24-20 up, but then Ray was playing really well. Newcastle struggling to score, as you were saying, 21-6, the Surrey run in that period. They led by 11 just before half time.
Yeah,
And,
Long
and,
made.
and led by 11 with Gooden having 0 points in the first
Well, I was
half.
going to say about this Gooden. Gooden played as mature a game as I've probably seen of him. Because Newcastle guarded him with Knight, and Knight's 6'6" long arms, and that was a ploy. That was basically, if Cameron Gooden's skill set is, to make those 3-point shots, particularly off his own dribble on the step back.
Mm,
Well, the way that you deal with that and the way you defend the step back three is you have someone with long arms who doesn't have to be that close to him, but who can still contest the shot with his wingspan. And rather than forcing anything, I just thought Gooden ran the team really, really well. And Ray was aggressive, and Steele was knocking down threes from the corner, and we're getting second shots and all of that stuff. Um, and Newcastle were yeah, they were just out of sync. I was disappointed because I thought they would, the group that they are, I thought they would come back on having lost at London on the Sunday. I thought they'd come back with a little bit of an edge. And they gave it 46 points in that first half, and they didn't really have that edge. And it was only Long made a three on the buzzer, which got them down to 8 at half time. And the problem with Surrey is they're not great defensively. They do hustle and they do play. They haven't got that much athleticism defensively. Two little guards. You know, Delican's probably 6'7", James maybe 6'6". Um, and that means it's difficult for them. They don't. It's difficult for them to blow teams away,
Mm.
even when they're scoring the ball really well. So being down 8 at half time, I thought was a win for Newcastle because I thought Surrey were really, really, really good.
You mentioned Surrey's 17 assists. Just for context, they've had an 18, a 19, and a 19 in the entire game this season, and they had
Yeah.
17 at halftime in this one.
Well, it works
Uh,
both ways, doesn't it? I mean, that counts to Surrey's offense and Newcastle's defense.
yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
you know, and I wasn't, as I say, I thought neither. I
But
thought,
it's also stylistic because Cheshire don't have that many
oh yeah, and they
pieces
are, and that's right.
who
They
play
do
like that.
play really pretty
Yeah,
basketball
yeah.
at times. You know that the spacing is right, and when they have the stretch five out there knocking stuff down, and Josh Steele's always in the right place to catch and shoot. You know that stuff really does make a difference.
Mm.
Um, it's when the game got a little bit rougher and grittier, it became Newcastle's game in the second half, even though the scores didn't change immediately.
Yeah, so the lead stayed sort of 4, 5, 6 points until the fourth quarter when Alan Ikens with four, Long with five. Eagles had an 11-0 run to lead 75-70 with three to go.
Well, I had my brother-in-law next to us in the game, and he said to us, "What he said to us in the third quarter, what do the Eagles have to do to win?" I think they were down maybe 6 at the time. I said, "Well, if they hold Surrey to 16, they'll win
Mm,
in the fourth quarter because I think they scored 15 in the third quarter,
mm,
and or 16 and whatever, 16 in the third quarter. So if they hold to 16 again, they'll win. It's not about their offense; it's about their defense. They'll manage it." And the defense was in front of me, and it really did. There was a tangible difference in their intent in switching screens and picking people up. And they kind of, and Stuttle made a big call when he kept Long in with kind of 8 minutes to go with four fouls.
mm,
Because Long obviously was shooting the ball really well, but he's also 6'8". He gives him a bit of length and able to switch out a little bit as well. So by doing that, Newcastle were able to play a bit smaller at times without Delpesh on the floor because Delpesh struggled against the shooters that Surrey have. And they also play with Alan Aikens basically defending the five man.
mm.
And that's right. This is happening right in front of me. So I'm watching it, and it is like for me, it's like going back in time. You got a kind of a scrawny 6'4" guy who's stepping in front of the post, who's just kind of using his instincts, that type of stuff, to disrupt, and then switching out on screens and guarding people and that type of stuff. And we get a lot of this in Newcastle, kind of on the Facebook in Newcastle about them needing a big guy, and they really don't. They need more they need some athleticism, I think. But the way that Long and Alan Aikens defend the post has actually been a real positive for them to defend the big guys without needing to be giants. And that just gradually wore Surrey down. And because Gooden never got going in the game, and this is where it kind of hurt them a little bit because they needed his offensive kind of kickstart, as it were. He made 1-3, but he wasn't in any rhythm because Newcastle had taken him out of the rhythm when everybody else got going. And then the question is, can they score the ball when it really matters, and can they score the cheap, nasty points?
Mm.
Can they get to the foul line? Can they get the offensive rebounds as opposed to the beautifully constructed, delicate dunks or steel corner threes, whereby everything's the way it's meant to be? What happens when Newcastle kind of mix it up? And they didn't quite make enough plays.
Let's go through the end of this because it did get close. 1:59 to go. Spencer missed a layup, but he was actually the first to react. Got his own rebound, was fouled, went to the line, made 1 for 2, 78-74.
Oh yeah,
Spencer.
just to jump in, I wanted to use my favorite Mr. Burns from The Simpsons word on this podcast for about 5 years now. The word is crapulent or crapulence, which is an appropriate summary of Newcastle's foul shooting
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
over this
yeah,
weekend. They were 6 of 16 in this game. I mean, gee, I'm sorry, and that wasn't bad foul shooters.
yeah,
That was
yeah.
Sam French at 30%, or the big guy at Plymouth they had who shot like 12%.
Mm.
You remember who I mean? The really big guy, British
Yeah,
bastard.
yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah,
can't remember his
yeah. I
name.
can't remember his name either.
No,
Yeah, I always go to Cephas Bunton for my
Stevens
free
Button,
throw
yeah.
air balls.
way back.
Guaranteed 2 air balls a game from the free throw
Yeah.
line.
Oh, Hatzbergovich nowadays.
Hadzibegovic, yeah.
Yeah. But so their free throw shooting was covered in crapulence.
147 to go. Ray to the rim. Long, as you mentioned, was on 4 fouls. That was his fifth.
Yeah, it was a nice little switch. They got long. They got long onto him in transition, and Long, I think, was tired at that point, and he knew he had no chance. Ray is really quick.
He's 1 for 2 from the free throw line, 78-75. Ward Hibbert then misses at the end of the shot clock. Alan Ikens, to me, looked like he'd got the ball on the offensive rebound, but somehow Ray pulled it away from him. The shot clock was late resetting, which kind of hurt Surrey because they were 5-on-4 as the referees
Yeah, more than
stopped the
hurt.
game.
Sorry, it was really, it really was. It was. I watched it back, and it was certainly it was a bad break for Surrey. I felt for Lloyd because that shouldn't, the shot clock thing. It does happen 2 or 3 times a game in many games now, whereby things aren't quite right and the shot clock isn't right. And I don't think, just so people know, there's a shot clock operator on the table who has one job, which is to operate the shot clock. Yeah. I know there are technical issues in various SLB venues, but I'm not sure that this was a technical issue. So I thought they did lose out. What I will say is, looking back on it, the shot clock went off. When the shot went off at about 1, then the shot clock got to 0 after it hit the rim. So the buzzer goes off at 0. When the buzzer goes off, that generally means the refs stop the game. I don't think they have to, but it generally means they stop the
Not if
game.
it hits the rim, you keep playing.
Yeah, but sometimes the buzzer, whatever, and then the clock stayed at 0-0, right? And I think the reason the clock stayed at 0-0 on that one was I'm not sure that the shot clock operator would know who had the ball.
Well, I wondered that because it looked initially like Alan Ikens has
Well,
got
yeah,
the
but
ball.
Anakin's had
So,
the ball, in
so,
which case it would be a 14.
so is the potential you're pressing the 4. You say they've got one job. There is 2 jobs because
Yes,
you have to either press 14 or 24, depending
4.
on who
That's right.
gets the ball.
So if you press the 14 and then it goes, but then you've got to immediately change that and press the
Yeah.
24, and does it work and it sticks at 0? I mean, I don't know. It was a tough break for Surrey. That's all I'll say. But when I look back at it, I understood why. I think that's why it happened.
Yeah, the other interesting thing, by the way, is Ray got the ball with 1 minute 20 on the clock. The referee stopped the game at 1:17 on the clock, and on the screen it said 23 seconds on the shot clock, although I don't think it said it on the thing. But they got the ball on the side with 23 seconds on the shot clock. So what happened to the other 2 seconds between
Well,
them
yeah,
getting the ball?
that's something you would notice. But because I never bothered between
Yeah,
the difference between 3 seconds and 1 second, yeah.
yeah, yeah,
23 and 21, no. But what I'll say is that's replay.
yeah, yeah,
That's a
yeah,
replay point.
yeah,
Dead
yeah,
easy. You go and look at the clock. What clock? What was the clock when we stopped?
yeah.
If they can't look at the clock, you can't. The hardest thing. It's actually. I was thinking about it. It must be the hardest thing for a referee because you're not
Because it's the
anticipating the
easier
shot.
thing for me at home to look at.
Yeah, but you're not anticipating that happening,
Yeah. Yeah. No, exactly.
so you can't see what's happening
That's the
beforehand.
thing. I don't think people really understand. The referees will be looking at the clock constantly, so that if something goes wrong,
Hmm.
they know when somebody goes to the free throw line, they know, okay, there's 48 seconds left, so there'll be 24.2 seconds when the shot clock runs out at the other end. They're
Yeah,
always processing this in case they need it. But in that situation, you wouldn't need it,
exactly.
so
You
you
wouldn't
wouldn't
need
think
it. The
to look
clock's
at it.
running. It's play on.
Yeah.
So there's no need for it, which is why replay becomes so important at that point. I
But
mean,
obviously they do look because they look to see that it's ticking, and he saw it wasn't ticking.
well, exactly. It's the
Yeah,
first thing you do.
yeah,
Well, you keep an eye. Yeah, that's
yeah,
right. You
yeah,
make
yeah.
sure everything's right. It's the trail ref. You got to see the whole court. So yeah, I
Yeah.
get that.
Let's go back. A bit static. Eventually, they got it to Adelicon inside, and he scored 54.9 seconds to go,
They did a good
78 to
job actually because
77.
Newcastle was switching on every screen and they were trying to take away the 3-point shots at this point, and they did a good job being patient enough to get it into Adelicon, and Knight came across underneath him as kind of the help man on the screen role, but Adelicon's too big and too smooth to miss that and got himself a layup. So I thought they played it quite well.
33.6 seconds to go. Knight kind of got a little bit stuck and then made a tough shot at the end of it, 80-77.
It's been a pattern for Newcastle kind of this year, when they've got to those games at home. One of their scorers has kind of found a way, be it Alan Aikens, be it Knight, or be it Okoro, to kind of just make it play because there was nothing in that play was dead. and and he was looking around and he had nothing to do but shoot it. And Knight hadn't really made a shot all night. He dunked it a couple of times. He played a lot of defensive hard work, but he hadn't really made a shot. And that was, they just have this habit of just kind of pulling out shots out their backside sometimes.
Timeout, no advance. Ray attacks, misses at the rim, bit of a scramble. Ray's first to the loose ball. Knight falling to the ground trips him up with 14.9 seconds to go, but it's
Yeah,
only the
I saw
team
your
fourth.
tweet about that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm like
but
Rob. I mean, I never even thought about it. In
yeah,
fact, in speed and
yeah, yeah.
full time speed, it was just lots of guys diving for the ball.
So for the people
Yeah.
who have moved on to Blue Sky and didn't
Yes.
see my tweet, um, basically
Blueski. The
in
Blueski.
in real time, and I've watched it back, and it looks even worse, by the way, in slow mo. In real time, as Knight goes down, one arm sort of catches him, but then the other arm goes out and trips him up. And maybe because I saw two unsportsmanlike called on Wednesday night in the Euro Cup, where my initial thing was there's nothing in that. But
Mhm.
when they got together and had a conversation and then went over to the thing, they've
Replay.
upgraded it to an unsportsmanlike. Is I feel like that if that was Euro Cup, they'd have gone to the screen and upgraded that to an unsportsmanlike because of the second. It's the second arm. I think it's his left arm comes
Yeah, it's
over,
left arm. But I
and
watched that back and I saw what you meant, and I couldn't.
mm,
And I'll be honest, it happened so fast. It was right in front of me in real
mm,
time, but it just happened so fast. You just saw two guys going for the ball. And I saw you went. I couldn't work out if that was his kind of left arm making a
mm.
swimming motion because his right arm had already gone down,
Yeah.
whether it was incidental or whether it was deliberate. I couldn't make it out.
But my
What I will
sense
say
of it is in the Euro Cup this year, I've seen enough incidental things or what
happened like
appeared
that.
to be incidental when the referees talked it over and go and look at the monitor, go, well, he's tripped him up. And
And
actually, let's say he's super clever and he's deliberately tripped him up because he's on the floor and he knows
yeah,
that is it Gooden's on the other side there. He's open for three and maybe it's a really clever foul. I don't think I don't think all
I
that
don't think
thought
it. I don't think
process
he goes to that
went
level.
through his head, but
Well, I think that there's two reasons. One, as I say, I don't think nobody in the gym asked for it. You didn't see any of the Surrey guys or the coach do the sign or anything like that. I never even thought about it, but I think that's possibly because the ball was going away from the basket.
yeah.
I think when the ball's going away from the basket in that way, the kind of there was no particular, as you say, there was no immediate kind of motivation
Mm,
for that to be done, if that makes any sense.
mm.
If you try to stop a guy getting to the rim or getting to layup, maybe it would be looked at differently. But yeah, yeah, replay. Well, I've got no problem with replay, but
Mm,
we don't have it. So
mm. Timeout. I thought out this play. I thought they took a lot of time to get something at the rim.
they
You
were
either have
looking
to
to
go
get,
quick to the rim or slow for a three.
yeah, they were looking to get to the rim. And the thing is, they don't, other than Gooden, they don't have guys who are really capable of getting their own three, making their own threes. If
Mm,
that makes any sense.
mm,
Ray is kind of a dribble forward and step back guy, so kind of a mid-range two guy, and he doesn't have the size to get over somebody if they're up there. Um, Gooden has that, but got Newcastle with Gardner with big guys, steals going off the catch. James isn't a natural kind of off the catch create shot, so they've got to create something for somebody else. And Newcastle switched all screens again, which basically means that whoever is screening, their man is just coming out to the ball. So
mm,
there's no gap, and it ended up with that's why Alan Aikens ended up on Ray, and that's why I was saying the difference with having the little guy playing there. You don't necessarily need him blocking the lane and being 7 foot. You need him to be able to come out and to make sure that Ray can't jack a three on him, make a three
mm,
on him.
mm,
And so eventually he did that. Sorry, yeah, they don't really, other than maybe good and making it, having shook them a really tough shot. They looked for a decent shot, and then Ray penetrated on Alan Aikens, and
Tried to draw the foul, ends up
I
missing
to
it.
draw the foul. I kind of don't think it was the smartest play by Alan Aikens to be that close to him, to be honest, in that situation when you're up three. But and the angle I've got in the arena, I couldn't see because it's right in front of us and you don't see the body. But when you looked in the camera angle, it looked like it was a pretty good play by Alan Aikens because it looked like he didn't change course.
Yeah.
He didn't stop to allow Ray to make contact. He just kept going with Ray.
Mm,
And if you keep going with that, it's very difficult for the ref to make a call.
mm,
If he's on his hip, yeah, but if he just keeps going in a straight line, and Ray is kind of looking for the contact and trying to get the foul as opposed to make the shot. I think Ray just needed to go and make the shot.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm honest. So I didn't think they
I
got
think
hold of that call.
he needed to go and make the shot, but 5 seconds earlier
Five
was
seconds
why to,
earlier, yeah. But again, that's part of their issues with, they score some very pretty baskets, 17
mm,
assists on 18 shots, but that means that no one's getting their own.
yeah.
When it comes down to it at the end of the game, Knight made a shot on his own, effectively, when he had nowhere else to
Yeah,
go.
yeah, yeah.
So sometimes it both ways work.
Yeah. Ward Hibbert got the rebound. That was it. So Long, 6 of 8 for 20, 6 of 8 for 3 for 23 points. Okoro, 14 points and 9 rebounds. Alan Ikens, 12. And some Surrey players scored as well, but I didn't write them down for some reason.
Well, from memory, I think Ray probably led them. I think James had 15. I think Ray had about 20. And Steele made maybe 16 for Steele.
Well,
There's a scores on
I'm
scores
now
anyway
looking
now.
it up to test your knowledge. So, Steele had 16, 6 of 8
Yes,
shooting.
thank you.
Uh, uh, Am I looking at the right game? Where is
Yeah,
it?
I think
Yeah,
I am.
Ray had 15 points
Only
and
15. Yeah.
James had 15 points.
I remember James had 50. I couldn't remember how much Ray had.
Yeah.
But yeah, they just fell short of. There was a couple. I mean, there's a couple of interesting things in the game. Brought Teo in with like 4 minutes to go. Brought Cholovinskas in with like 5 minutes to go, just to give the other guys a blow a little bit. I didn't think that helped their rhythm. I don't think it really cost them anything. But Surrey's bench hasn't been that great. Cholovinskas made a couple of, missed a couple of shots in the first half, never really had an impact in the game. Whereas the guy he could have brought in was the American guy Brown, who actually made a three in the third quarter, had made a tough play in transition in the first half. So, again, you're prioritizing young English talent over your American.
Mm,
But on the evidence that you've seen in the game, you would probably put the American in.
mm.
So again, it's that balance of, you're giving these kids a chance to get out there, but having that confidence in them. But at some point they have to produce because you don't get many games like that where you're in it on the road in this league this season, and you've got to kind of maximize every opportunity.
Let's go to Sunday. Bristol Flyers 95, Manchester Basketball 92, sorry. Manchester Basketball 85 after overtime. Thomas Edwards was back for Bristol. Madut had the first 7 points. Basketball led 10-3 inside 3 minutes. Scoring slowed after that. It was 8-9 over the next 7-15.
Well,
Having
basically what happened was Madut came out and destroyed Tennyson.
mm,
Tennyson was guarding him, well, basically wasn't guarding him.
yeah, yeah,
And he lasted 2.5, and I think Tennyson threw a turnover, threw a
yeah,
behind, Blakey behind the back pass. Madut made a layup on him in the first play, going to the middle to his right, made a three the next play. And by the time that Ashton Langford ran past Tennyson full court and made an uncontested layup, Tennyson was out.
yeah,
That was 3 minutes in. And Walsh was in. I think Walsh played 37 and a half minutes. So Walsh played the rest of the way. Actually, sorry, played the overtime. So he came out a little bit. Tennyson, so if you're telling me before the game that, Bristol are going to beat Manchester without Keedy Johnson, and basically without Trey Tennyson having any substantial part in the game, because he came back in beating the second quarter, got another 2 minutes, and then Andreas put him back in the
yeah.
top.
I think he had 10 minutes
Uh,
in total.
10 minutes in total. You tell me they're going to beat that? I said, not a chance.
Mm,
But Manchester are just so talented, but yet so um, unformed. It's a hard word, not deformed, but unformed.
mm,
You just don't quite get. They kind of defer to each to kind of your shot, my shot a little bit, and you just kind of feel watching them. There are a few, maybe not many, but maybe a couple of egos are just a little bit heavier than the teams.
mm,
And Bristol struggled the whole first half. No
mm.
question. Manchester, Cody John came in 9 points in 3 minutes or something like that.
Two threes in an 8-0 run to make it 11-27 at the start of the second quarter, Cody
Yeah,
Johnson.
and Manchester's defense really, really troubled Bristol with their length, because they're a long team, they're a big team. And weren't playing with any force. They weren't playing with court presence. And I think Walsh deserves a lot of credit for this game, because I thought he kind of changes his role a little bit when they haven't got those two guards playing. He becomes kind of everything. He becomes a point guard and the penetrator and everything. And on top of that, he's playing against his old team
Yeah, yeah.
and his old mate in Callum.
Mm,
Right. So, and no doubt they didn't want him this summer. I assumed maybe Bristol gave him a better offer. I don't know.
mm,
But, so he's playing I want this game.
mm,
And now this is a difference what I was saying with Caledonia. Now Walsh has got the bit between his teeth and it's on him.
mm,
There's no Johnson, there's effectively no Tennyson, there's Corey Samuels and Evan Walsh. So they've now got ownership of that situation.
mm,
Right. So how do they react? Well, they become invested in it. And they become invested not just in the offensive end, but they become invested in the defensive end. And the game slows down a little bit, particularly in the third quarter,
mm.
which, well, anyway,
Let,
up until
let,
halftime, you thought Manchester were going to win by 20.
Yeah, yeah. So
Third quarter,
Robinson got it down to 6 just before halftime. Manchester scored the last 8 points in the final 100 seconds to lead 30 to 44 at halftime. And then started the third quarter, 16-2 Bristol run, and the scores are tied at 46 points. Lewis and Samuels.
well, here's the thing. I wasn't sure Manchester's lineup to start the third quarter. Certainly, Madut didn't start. I think John started, and I think Lewis started. I might be wrong about Lewis, and maybe he came in for Ashton Langford maybe after a minute or two. Um, but I was surprised that you wouldn't go straight back to the lineup that had
Torched them in
started
the
the
first
game.
3 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, it started the game, and then I think I'm going to be a little bit critical of the rookie coach, but it's probably because that's a difficult. I've been in that environment down at Bristol a lot of times.
Mm,
At 8-0 in that third quarter, there had to be a timeout.
mm,
And it's not because you don't overact to your guys, you don't overact to a timeout, but playing in front in Bristol is a nightmare. The gym is loud. You've seen before, even the Leicester game, they were 10 down, weren't they? And they came back in
yeah,
3 minutes.
yeah, yeah.
The gym is loud. The team plays with nothing to fear. They're attacking that bottom end where all the lunatic fans are,
Mm.
in that stance. They're not lunatics, but you
We
know what
mean
I mean.
that in a nice way. That's a
I
term
mean
of
that in a nice way.
endearment
I'm
to
a
anybody
fan
who
of
sits on the
lunatic fans,
baseline there.
right? Really, where it's all the guys on the left side there who are kind of the real diehards are behind the coach's bench. So the bench is there, so they're scoring at that end. They're up. They're flying around, and am I right about that? Yes, I am. No, I'm not. They're attacking the other end. They're defending in front of their bench. My fault. But they're flying around. And the noise in there gets to the point whereby, a 15-point lead can disappear very quickly. And it's exactly what
Mm,
happened.
yeah.
And, you really have to use your timeouts to manage the crowd and just keep it down. Get your guys calm, refocus, because, it can be 30 to 8 easily in that gym. And it's just the ball's not bouncing. It's all going fast and it's flying around. And I thought he should have done that and he didn't. And I think next time he probably will.
Mm,
You're not, in Bristol, when you're up, you're not saving your timeout to the end. You don't need 3 timeouts at the end. You want to win the game before that.
mm,
And certainly at the beginning of the third quarter, they should have called one and tried to take the air out of it a little bit. But instead, it became 16-2 run, game on. Then suddenly momentum is, they've got it back in 5 minutes. You worked hard for a whole half to get a 15-point lead, and it's back in 4 minutes. It's like,
mm,
that is hard.
mm. Let's get to the end then. 72-69 going into the final 2 minutes. Robinson in the key with a hook shot, 157 to go, made it
Yeah,
74-69.
Robertson kind of took over at the end, didn't
Yeah,
he?
he did.
He
Yeah,
did,
yeah.
and the problem is, I'm afraid, the Manchester talk a lot. I was there, I watched that, I
Mm,
saw the Newcastle, they talk a lot. Moore talks a hell of a lot, and we talked about Moore before. And that's Robinson's Moore's matchup. So, I got the impression that Manchester talking just kind of woke Bristol up a little bit.
mm,
Because
mm,
Bristol, they kind of woke up the line instead of just kind of just meticulously kind of putting them away. I thought they kind of created a monster.
mm.
And
Uh,
Robinson was the biggest example
yeah.
for that.
Mitchell, tough three, 133 to go. Robinson right back at you for three, 122 to go. KO made it three threes in a row and
Yeah, I mean, this
57
is a
seconds to
talent
go,
play now.
77-75.
This is a talent play now. I mean, Mitchell's three was ridiculous.
Mm,
Just a ridiculous tough shot. But this is what I'm talking about when I say it kind of becomes your shot, my shot. You're relying on these guys to make tough shots for you, you know, and not necessarily you know, creating the easy stuff that you would want.
Mm. 41.9 seconds to go. Samuels drives to the basket. Fifth foul on Madut. Timeout called. He comes out, makes both free throws, 79-75.
Okay, now this is real progress for Samuels
Mm,
because he's been, a little bit like Dalpesha Newcastle with the four wing out. He's been elevated to be playing at the end. He hasn't played at the end of many games for Bristol. He's
mm,
been there 4 years, 5 years. He hasn't played at the end of many games. So for him to be aggressive at the end, that's a major. That's how long it takes.
mm,
We're talking about we're talking about Toto at Glasgow. He's not going to happen in 10 games.
mm,
It's taken Corey Samuels 3, 4, 5 years to be that aggressive when it matters to shoot those shots when he needs to with confidence. That means they've got a player, but they've worked hard to get that player. It took
mm,
Connor that long, well,
mm,
maybe a little bit less, but it doesn't happen overnight.
mm. 34.9 seconds to go. Ashton Langford to the rim. Rebound was jammed in by Moore, 79-77.
I've got a comparison for Ashton Langford, by the way. I was watching the way he moves and kind of the way he carries himself, and it just clicked in my head that he's got a lot of Cortez Edwards about him.
Interesting.
Kind of a big-ish guy. His game's a bit different.
Yeah.
But he's kind of just the way that he kind of surveys everything. And Cortez played for Worcester and Newcastle, finished
Mm,
3 or 4 years ago. He's in Europe now.
mm,
Um, just kind of that little kind of presence about him. He's got that presence about him, which makes you think he's going to make plays. He's probably a better 3-point shooter and doesn't shoot as many mid-range shots. But I just
They'd
thought,
be happy with that sort of level, though, wouldn't
I
they?
think they would, yeah.
21.1 seconds to go. Robinson illegal screen, Manchester ball, and I turned
Yeah, I
to his.
watched that, and it wasn't a legal screen, and they weren't knowing what they were doing in that offense. They,
Mm.
they weren't, the set wasn't quite right. And I watched it back, and it was a fair call, I think.
I was watching this one in Cheshire at this time, and I turned to Zane and said, "There's no way they're going for two here. Somebody is jacking up a three."
Mhm.
Um, but Ashton Langford threw a great lob pass from the 3-point line, basically to Moore for the dunk, and tied the score
It's an outrageous
79-79.
play. It's
Yeah,
an absolutely outrageous play to make
yeah.
that play with that degree of difficulty at that
Mm,
time. And they are a highlight team.
mm,
They're a highlight footage team. There's just no question about that. The talent that they have and the ability that they have. They're a highlight footage team. To make that play in time, circumstance,
mm,
that's the play of the season.
mm,
To do something that degree of difficulty because it was threaded and
mm,
it wasn't wide open.
mm,
That type of difficulty at that time is the play of the season.
mm,
Problem is, it only counts for two.
mm,
Layups count for two as well.
mm,
So you don't get one for style points or one for courage points. It only counts for two. And eventually, those type of plays kind of run out. You need some of the more rudimentary ones.
mm. Sheffield missed a three and Robinson couldn't tip it in on the buzzer, so it went to overtime. Manchester led by a couple at the start, but then Flyers basically finished the game with 11 of the last 13 points and won
Yeah, I thought
pulling away.
Manchester ran out of it. I don't think KO touched it. I don't know if even he was on the court, to be honest. I haven't watched it back, but I don't think KO touched the ball much in overtime at all. And for me, even and Mitchell is really talented, but KO's the type of guy by if you maneuver, he's an efficient scorer. And if you maneuver him into the right positions to get the ball at the right times, he's going to score. And I don't think they thought the game out in overtime. I thought they were playing a little bit with emotion as opposed to with thought, and also playing. And when you've got that degree of talent on the court, the talent wants to show itself. That can often result in shooting shots which you think you can make, but aren't the best shots. Whereas Bristol at the other end, they were able to get to the rim. Evan Walsh again was competitive. Kendall Lewis, was a changed man at half time. I can only imagine what Kapula said to him at half time because he came out in the second half in overtime and he was absolutely all over the court. And they need that from him. Sherfield's kind of a bit of an irritant type of player, I figured out. He's always kind of around there. He had the European game. He was involved in the disqualification and that type of stuff. Him and I can't remember which Manchester player it was in this game. We're getting into it. It might have been more. We're getting into it a little bit as well, which is what you kind of like. And in that gym, it just kind of grist to the mill. It just feeds the fans and feeds it going. And eventually, Manchester's individualism didn't quite beat the fact that Bristol were able to get layups. And what I mean by that is, Robinson was making shots off plays. He was screening, he was popping to the three, or they were running the ball around the pit, around the perimeter, and they were throwing it to him in the post. Okay, that wasn't happening as much with Manchester. Bristol's offense at that point was smoother, and they were getting the ball where it needed to go to give them a chance of making high percentage shots, and they made just enough. But that
I
he
think
doesn't.
I think Gareth on commentary gave a little nod to what might have been said at halftime.
Did
If
he? I
I'm
didn't listen. I
honest,
didn't. I
yeah,
didn't hear that.
yeah.
So, but
In a very polite way, he said that he'd been on the receiving end of what may have come.
yeah. Well, as I say, that was just my watching the game. I didn't hear that, but that makes absolute sense because they can't win, particularly without Johnson and with Tennyson like that. And obviously Tennyson's back to Atwood's girlfriend's gone back south again to the country, traversing
Yeah,
the country.
yeah,
If Tennyson, he's a rookie, so you're going to have ups and downs. But if he plays the level of that he played the first 3 or 4 minutes, which is base, he can't play.
mm.
And one thing I was really impressed with was that Andreas basically said, "You're not
Didn't
playing."
blame him. Yeah, yeah,
That's fine. You
yeah.
got at some point in time, you have to set down a rule, and that player can either go and sulk, in which case he's off, he can go back across America,
Mm.
or he can take it on board and he can come back and play hard and take the message.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a character of player, and that's what you get with rookies.
Mm.
He's only 7 weeks into his rookie season. He's away from home. He might be homesick. He might be fed up. He might think he's not getting enough touches. He might have all that stuff going on. But at the end of the day, if you're hurting your team, sit him down and let's see what he's got. And I thought that decision and bringing in the guys who gave a toss, like Walsh and Thomas Edwards and Samuels and Lewis playing the way he was and Sheffield playing the way he was and Robinson and McCormack, those guys won that game and they won it not on a talent level, they won it on everything apart from talent. That's not because they're not talented, but compared to what Manchester had on the court,
Mm.
they won it with togetherness, with teamwork, with hard work.
Mm.
You know?
Flies basketball.
Yeah,
Uh,
I don't know what it is. It can be. It's a malleable concept.
yeah. Robinson 22, Walsh 6 of 9 field goals for 22.7 rebounds, 4 assists. Sheffield
Remarkable,
scored
isn't it? Walsh played
20.
37 minutes, he had 9 field goal attempts. He plays 22 minutes, he'll have 15.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
It's a different mindset when you've got that degree of responsibility. And the reality is, for him to get to where he wants to get to in his career, he's going to have to be this. He's going to have to be that games guy,
Mm.
not the guy who just comes in and just is just a spark plug and tucks up shots, good shots, bad shots, whatever, in control, out of control. He can control a game the way that he did in this game, as I say, 9 shot attempts in 37 minutes and score 22 points. You become a very valuable
Mm-hmm.
player.
Mm. KO 20 points and 6 rebounds. Mitchell 15 points and 12 rebounds. Ashton Langford 14 points and 5 assists. Let's go to East Kilbride. Caledonia Gladiators 76. Newcastle Eagles 90. I'm sure the Eagles fans will be wanting to play Caledonia every week if they
I think
weren't
we do,
already
don't
doing
we?
that. Yeah.
And we drew them in the cup. I think it's four now, for three
Fourth.
three
Yeah, yeah.
games in Scotland already.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
No long for this one. I saw they signed Christian James, but he wasn't. I don't
he was in the
think he was.
gym.
Was he in the gym?
I
He
think you saw
didn't
a picture
play.
of Paul Blake at the end there. I think Paul had driven him up, but I think
Okay.
he didn't get in the country until the morning. So,
Yeah.
but he looked. It was good actually having him seeing on the telly. You could see him stand next to Paul, so you could figure out how tall he was. See how many inches they've lost on the plane. He
Yeah,
seems to be
yeah.
a decent size. So yeah,
Malcolm starting this game for Caledonia, and we sort of touched on it earlier, but there was barely any minutes for Onwas or Fag Benley in this game.
Bentley played 1 minute, chucked up an air ball. I think 1 minute 30 seconds, air ball three from the corner, and the coach sat him down.
Mm.
Onwas confuses me.
Mm.
He's a third year guy there. He's a third year import there. They know what he brings. There's nothing that's ever been out there to suggest he's a bad character guy. You don't sign a guy for 3 years if he's a bad character guy. He's got his degree from the university whilst he's been there. He's never let them down. He creates a degree of toughness for them, and suddenly he's just not playing.
Mm.
That in that group, you're either you say, oh, he doesn't shoot the ball as well as Malcolm. Okay, well, why have you got him? You've got him there to provide toughness. What do you need? You're losing. You need toughness.
Mm.
You need someone to set the tone, and that means somebody. That means I would have thought he would be the one. particularly as Ali Hodge has been injured and is playing kind of in and out a little bit.
Mm,
So that absolutely befuddles me. I don't know what is going on with that. But it just goes to show, that this whole idea about you need big squads, you don't for a single game, a
mm,
single time, you really don't.
mm.
Newcastle played six guys basically in this
Yeah,
game.
yeah. Gladiators led 9-4 early on, but Alan Ikens scoring nine. Eagles went on a 14-2 run to lead 11-18. This is the game I've seen the least of, but this chunk in the middle that I didn't go back and watch
Hmm.
the the whole of it felt like Newcastle were in control. So.
Yeah, well, I mean, Alan Aikens basically took over the first half.
Mm,
He had 17 points. He scored inside, he scored outside, scored in transition. He scored at his own speed. He never got anywhere near the rim. He got offensive rebounds. He made passes. Um, and Newcastle's defense was okay. In the meantime, Caledonia were kind of befuddled. As I say, they're playing people left, right, and centre. Tomzik is I thought Newcastle scouted Tomzik really well because they didn't give him the shots that London had, which is basically the one dribble off the screen, pull up threes. I think he was 1 of 8 from three in this game, and Hill, the point guard, was 2 of 13. So in total, so
mm,
that's like they've guarded the guards really well because that's three of 21. That's basically where the game is won and lost. But you look at Newcastle and you think, where are they going to score? I mean, Spencer's hardly scored the ball since for about a month.
mm,
He's one of the six. Del Pesh is, very hit or miss in relation to scoring the ball. So that gives you four guys,
mm,
basically Okoro, Knight, Alan Aikens, and Ward Hibbert. And even Ward Hibbert's not the guy you say, go and give us 30.
mm,
So you think, how are they going to score? And they just find a way, and particularly in the first half, it was Alan Aikens, and then they kind of take over for each other. In the third quarter, it was Okoro. And then they get stuff out of transition, and Knight gets cheap ones, and suddenly they've got 78 points on the board,
mm,
and you're not quite sure how.
mm,
Because they're not all knockdown shooters. They're not um, they're not getting stuff that's particularly easy. It's certainly not beautiful basketball. The spacing isn't the same as it, but like even Sheffield's or Cheshire's is. But they all seem to be really competing with each other and playing well. And um, in Caledonia, to be fair to the coach, his rotation shortened in the third quarter. He played Wheeler most of the second half.
mm.
Um, but I don't see. I think bringing in to use a phrase, a point guard has been around Europe at this point of the season. To come into this group, who's primarily a shooting guard, I don't think he's the right fit for them. And I don't think And the whole thing is just a little bit befuddling. I think he's a good player. He's
Mm,
played at Groningen last year, and he's played around Europe, and his numbers are good. I think he can play. But for this team at this time, his minutes are going to eat into Hill's minutes. Well, is Hill your guy or is Hill not your guy? If he's not your guy, he's shooting 2 of 13 because he doesn't know whether he's playing or not because he can't shoot.
mm,
You know, um, it just kind of just screams dysfunction.
mm.
And Newcastle are actually the opposite. They scream functional.
Yeah.
They really do. As I say, they're probably outplaying the talent at the moment because if you think certainly the depth of talent, as I say, they played this game with six guys. Bynum got 7 minutes. Sova Kande played 2.5 minutes. No Long, no Defoe, no James, the new guy. But you just see them all kind of connected to each other, and you see them the individuals who are kind of living up to the roles that Mark Stewart was requiring of them. Delpesh is probably the biggest example.
Yeah.
Since Defoe's gone down, offensively, he has really, really been impactful. Left-hand hook shots, right-hand hook shots. And against the big guys, he's holding his own against every big guy in the league. So, yeah, that's what it was. I thought it was a functional team against a dysfunctional one.
They did get it to one on a three at the start of the fourth quarter, but then Eagles hit six in a row to lead 67-74, and they ended up running away with it. I was just watching this before we came on this bit, and there was uh, three plays that I thought sort of like summed it up. There was a missed shot, a missed three. I can't remember who took it for Caledonia. Came down the other end. Ward Hibbert hit a three, and then came back, and Hill airballed a three. And I was like, hmm.
Well, I mean, Caledonia made a ton of threes in the third quarter. I thought Newcastle were flagging a little bit. Fraser Malcolm hit a couple. Seneca Knight was off him a little bit. And I thought Newcastle defensively might be flagging because they did a really good job in the first half, keeping it off the 3-point line. And you're worried, and I think they scored 31 points in the third quarter, Caledonia. And you're thinking, oh, if this, if Newcastle don't defend the 3-point line better, this game is gone. They're going to run out of legs. But even when they got back to one, Knight then gets a cheap steal and gets a run out in transition, and then Ward Hibbert makes a three, and it's up to 7. And the intangible of the belief just did not seem to be there.
Yeah, yeah.
And on top of that, you know, they are really teams are focusing on Whelan. I mean, Okoro was focusing on Whelan. Okoro, we talked about last time they played 2 weeks ago. Okoro's defense on Whelan was, very, very high level. And it means that somebody else has to make a play. And because it's such a rotating cast, you're not quite sure who it's going to be. There's a comedy technical of the season as well in this one. Did you see that one?
Oh, I missed that.
Oh, right. Well, Stu will reference it in his interview afterwards if you listen to that. But what happens is there's a play whereby it's kind of a scrambling play on the sideline, and Knight actually hustles really well to recover the basketball, and kind of probably unwisely drives into the middle and to try and make a layup. And as he does it, he pushes off on, I think, Jimenez with his left arm. So it's clear unsportsmanlike, not unsportsmanlike, clear offensive foul. No problem with that. Ref's called an offensive foul. So the camera cuts to Stuttle on the sideline at one of these kind of close-up angles, and he's clapping his hands like that, shouting, "Good job, Seneca, good job." Which, to be honest, he tends to shout a little bit with at night, because he's constantly trying to keep Knight connected and defensively connected to what he wants to do. Well, I think we've had a misinterpretation of that.
All right.
The refs have heard and I don't know which ref it was now. We'll find out. One of them has heard, it's seen the clapping and assumed that's a sarcastic clap.
Yeah,
And because of what we saw on the camera, I am 99.9% sure it wasn't.
yeah.
I didn't see what was it, because immediately Stronach has to get up and say, and Stu will say, "I just said good job," and Stronach's trying to keep him out of the way and all sorts of stuff that way. So I think it was the anticipated sarcasm technical, as opposed to the real sarcasm, the real sarcastic clap technical. So yeah, I'll find out who it was. There's 3 Scottish refs. It's got to be one of them. But overall, beyond that, yeah, it was, as I say, it was function against dysfunction. Okoro was again, exceptional. Kieran was salivating over him on the commentary. 27, but he makes every right play, and he doesn't give it up at the other end. And when they got him going, when he got himself going, you could see there was a little bit of respect between him and Whelan, because when Whelan made a tough shot on him, he's wandering down the court nodding, and you could just see it. I mean, they are 2 high-level players going at it, and really excellent weekend for Newcastle. They kind of held serve. You'd expect them to beat Surrey and Caledonia because, Lasker described them as 8v9 last week, and it might be right. But still, you got to win those games. And winning 4 times against Caledonia before the international break is pretty impressive. And
they might become functional by the end of the season, so you get those.
Well, they might. I mean, I'm on the fence on that. I'm afraid. I'm not. I think there may be a bit more dysfunction to come. I think it all depends on how ruthless they are, because if Caledonia take the view that we can kind of bumble along with what we've got, I'm afraid that's a game. Again, I talked about 2 weeks ago. You're playing against basically half a Newcastle team. A little bit more than half, but it's still, 6 guys, one just off the plane who's not in time. The other guy who made 6 threes on Friday nights had to fly home for personal reasons for a week. You got Ward Hibbert who's come back, and I know they weren't expecting him to play. I think it's because Josh Ward Hibbert wanted to play that he was playing. And Defoe's not playing either. And you're playing them at home, and you've already lost them twice at home. That's kind of a game whereby if there's going to be a letdown, that's, you've got to exploit it, and you got to win. And you're 0-3, which means you should be desperate for a win. And they never really came close. I mean, I know they got close in the game, but they never really came close. So I think they need to rip it up, and need to take some very hard decisions. But those decisions might have a financial impact, which means they can't take them, which means they kind of got bumbled through at the end of the year. So Who knows whether they'll be more functional or not? We'll see. It's
We
going to be a tough
will.
job for the coach, to be
Yeah,
fair.
yeah, it is.
You know,
Yeah.
it's not an easy job now.
Malcolm 17.7 rebounds, Whelan 13 points, Stuckman 13 points, 38% field goal shooting for Caledonia. Cora, you mentioned 27 points, 10 of 14 shooting. Alan Ikens 21.6 assists, Knight 19.7 rebounds, 55% field goal shooting for Newcastle.
Mm.
Gladiators 0-4 in the league. That has not happened since their first season in Edinburgh,
Remember
1998,
that? Remember I
99.
used to go, went there, the quarry.
Yeah,
Watch a few games, if I remember. They had Ted Berry and Chris
Ted
Webber.
Berry. Yeah, yeah.
Chris Webber.
Did Webber play in the first year?
He
Can't
played in one of
remember.
them, certainly.
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
for Newcastle at that point.
I think they lost their first 10, if I
Yeah.
remember rightly, and then it was live on Sky. They won their first game at home. It was a great game. Ted Berry
Yeah.
scored on the buzzer. Brilliant.
Good
Enjoyed
venue.
that.
That.
Yeah.
And Webber once started a fight at the arena at Newcastle with Ogun Jimmy. Great fight.
I thought you were going to say with himself, but there
No, he could have, yes.
you
But with Steve Ogun Jimmy, and
go.
quite disgracefully, he got TJ stepped 2 feet off the bench and got suspended for a game. I was furious. But yeah,
And for anybody listening or watching at home, not that Chris Webber.
no, different Chris Webber, indeed.
Sheffield Sharks 79, Leicester Riders 61, 100th league meeting between these two teams, only the seventh team combination to get to that. Scores were tied 11-11 after 5 minutes, and then Leicester with an 11-2 run led 13-22.
Yeah, they did, and kind of a weird game this because Leicester deflated a little bit, and
Mm,
uh, they started out, and particularly, they are to a certain degree, well, substantial degree, Hunter dependent. There's a lot on Jalen Hunter in that team, and he played basically the whole first quarter from memory. And I think Zach Jackson probably played the whole first quarter as well. And they got themselves into a bit of a rhythm. Um, quite aggressive. Also, were able to kind of shift the ball, get some threes. Wright got a couple of shots off, and were able to kind of compete defensively. Unfortunately, Leicester's bench just couldn't survive with Sheffield. And Sheffield are bringing off far more experienced guys off the bench than Leicester are. This is where, budgetary stuff comes into it, because Sheffield are bringing in Jamel Anderson, EC Matthews, and in this game, Drake Jeffries,
mm,
right? Those three guys, and Ocharobia
mm,
come off the bench, right? Now, Matthews, particularly Matthews and Jeffries are really high level starting quality players, right? Leicester off the bench, it's harder because um, you're bringing in Connor, who's having to basically play as a sole guard.
mm,
Then it's Spencer Johnson, who's a two, but basically probably more of a three than a two, you would say. Um, Blake Bowman, Duke Shelton, and Jerome Brooks. And there's not much offense there. And unless teams fall asleep on Connor or on Thompson, not Thompson, sorry, Johnson,
mm.
there's not much offense there. And Sheffield were ready for them. Sheffield shut them down, and they didn't score a basket for about 7 minutes in the second quarter. And that,
14, 14 points in a row Sheffield had around that first break. So they were 27-22 early in the second quarter. They stretched that out to 35 26. Just wanted to ask a question, Dave, actually. It was about that point in the game. 2:46 to go in the second quarter. The Hunter technical. He was driving in. A Sheffield player slipped to the floor. I can't
was a
remember who it was.
foul.
Slipped to the floor. He tripped over him and turned the ball over as a result of being tripped over. Didn't get a foul called, so
Yeah.
he sort of slapped the floor and
The
got
old visual descent thing.
the old
Yeah, but
visual descent
it
thing.
was
Got a
three slaps. That
technical.
was a problem. It was
Yeah, it was three. He
probably
might
what.
have got away with two, but definitely not
Um,
three. But I was surprised that if you get tripped to the floor and turn the ball over, it's not a foul, even if it's accidental.
was a foul. I mean, it's a foul. It's a blocking foul. I mean, it's a weird blocking foul, but it's a blocking foul because you're not in legal guarding position and you make contact. And and that's why we don't. That's why we're not playing rugby.
Mm.
Now if the ref took the view that, so I understand Hunter's frustration on that. I get that absolutely. He also, I mean, having said that, by getting the technical, he stopped the fast break because he was still on the floor at the time. So
Yeah,
there's a
yeah,
5-on-4 thing going
yeah,
on there.
yeah,
Oh, and by the way, I missed the fun bit about Manchester and Bristol about Isaiah Moore. This time it was the stanchion that he took it out on in this game. It wasn't the basketball stanchion; it was the one next to the Bristol bench.
yeah, yeah,
Exactly. So,
yeah,
there's no bit of equipment safe in a gym with Isaiah Moore. I'll tell you that now.
yeah.
The refs are showing
I think it
remarkable.
was far enough off the court that the refs didn't notice.
Yeah, I think that's right.
The
If I
thing.
had been on the Bristol bench, I'd have been,
Yeah, yeah,
oh, what are you doing? You're attacking our equipment.
yeah,
Anyway, yeah, so no, yeah, I mean, I thought it was, yeah, it was a missed call. It's a frustrating call. Anyway, and that does happen.
mm,
Um, but that wasn't the problem wasn't what happened when he was in the game. The problem happened was that when he wasn't in the game.
mm,
They until Abercrombie banked a three in with about 3 minutes to go, they hadn't made a field goal
mm,
second quarter. And Sheffield, because Sheffield they rotated Chapman out early. Chapman's able to come back in fresh and play against the Leicester bench.
mm,
And at that point, Chapman basically took over the game.
mm,
Um, and um, and it became a bit of a procession from that
mm.
point on.
They had a 9-0 run, Sheffield, early in the third quarter to 49-34, and that was basically the game.
Yeah, I think Leicester are a little bit like Caledonia, but they're far better than Caledonia, 100 times better than Caledonia. Um, but Sheffield handled them too easily for my liking in this game for holding up at 60. And also by doing that, Sheffield gave everybody else a blueprint of how to defend against Leicester. I think they're probably one kind of scorer, one kind of 6-4 scorer short. Um, I'm not sure what Brooks is giving them at the moment. I'm not sure that they need his minutes. Um, he's not done anything wrong, but he's not coming in and they're not running any plays for him, and he's rebounding occasionally. I think that they're, with having Wright and Johnson at the two and Abercrombie basically at the four, and Thompson being fundamentally a non-scorer. He's not a guy who's gonna go, and he's not Nelson Henry. You're not gonna throw the ball 3 times to him in a row in the post. He can score, but you're not going to lose sleep as a coach if he's scoring on you. It just puts so much pressure on Hunter and Jackson. And Jackson, this is the first game of the season where I think either I hadn't figured out whether it was Sheffield who really focusing on Jackson or whether he just wasn't quite there.
Mm,
Because without him, and he, to be fair, he played 30 plus minutes, but without him and without Hunter, they really kind of struggled. And either that or you play Hunter off the ball, you play Connacht together with him, and you maybe get smaller that way to try and create some offense. Abercrombie at the five, I don't know. But they didn't, and they had some. It was a little bit like the kind of the fourth quarter against Sheffield last week. They had some looks, and they weren't bad looks, but there were also times where you saw kind of offense which was kind of very un-Leicestery. Shelton backing in from the 3-point line and shooting a fadeaway, that type of thing. Which you think that's not the way that their teams have always run. That's not the offensive
The
system.
interesting thing on this from Leicester's shooting perspective is the 38% from the floor, but it was actually 14 of 35 from two. Their 3-point shoot percentage was not too far off where it normally was, but they couldn't make enough twos.
No, and that's they don't really have that, and I suppose that's the point I'm making. It's actually evidenced by the numbers. They don't have that many guys who can get separation.
Mm,
Wright and Johnson are primarily shooters. Hunter can get separation, can finish at the rim. Not it's not his entire game, but he can certainly do it. Jackson obviously can score anywhere he wants. But then you look off the bench and Connor doesn't attack the rim much anymore. They don't really have Blake Bowman, yes and no. You're trying to get something out of Blake Bowman, but he's still in the kind of the position whereby you're not quite sure what you're going to get every game.
mm,
Um, um, and I just think kind of a 6-4. Your archetypal BBL 6-4 scorer
mm.
wouldn't go amiss in that team. I think Rob could use him. So we'll see. But to do that, you've got to get a little bit. You'd have to go a little bit smaller. They also struggled a little bit when Shelton was in the middle on his own defensively. but he's only probably 6'7". And I know when I was watching the season he had at Newcastle, when Newcastle basically fell apart,
Mm,
a lot of that was that when he was defending the middle on his own, it was hard because of the athleticism of and the strength of the guards around him. So they've got a few things to figure out. Sheffield really were perfunctory. They did what they do. Chapman was really good and took over the game. Matthews is a scorer who's going to have to be on everybody's list,
mm,
and Clay better and better, I think, every week. But against that, they've really lost Jeffries. Jeffries really isn't getting any looks or any shots at the moment. And they do have a proliferation of guards that, if everybody stays happy and everybody's on it, that's going to be fine. But the key for Atiba is going to be trying to keep them all happy.
Chapman 26 rebounds, 5 assists. Clay 13.7 rebounds. Nixon and Matthews both had 11. Hunter 18. Abercrombie 14. Jackson 11. Let's go to the
The
last.
rest of the team had 18 between them.
Yeah, we only have 61.
Yeah, and from memory, I think I looked at the stats on this one. I think Leicester's bench had 7 points in like 53 minutes, which if you extrapolate that out, that's 28 in a game.
Yeah.
So that's where I think they need an upgrade, or they need to find a way of having a consistent scorer off the bench.
Let's go to the final game. Cheshire Phoenix 93, London Lions 96. No Taylor, no Soko in this one.
Now, Soko was there, wasn't he?
Soko was there, yeah.
Taylor wasn't.
No, he wasn't. No.
Rumors abound online that he won't be there anymore, and I don't know
Right.
that I don't know the veracity of those rumors. I don't know where they come from, and I've got no inside knowledge. But it's a bit of a canary in the coal mine for me, to be honest. That nothing's been announced and he's not there. And the basketball world is generally incapable of keeping a secret for long.
Yeah. I've heard the same rumors. I don't think it's the canary in the coal mine.
All right.
Let's go to London leading early, but a 14-3 run by the Knicks had them 16-11 up after 6 minutes.
Yeah, this was a kind of a Cheshire player with kind of an option and a backup option, and Ben's not shy.
Yeah.
So basically, he started off with Rock and Atwood,
Mm,
and Kristen and White and Holden. Now Holden's going to play. White's going to get his minutes because he's he can go off just like that.
mm,
And Kristen is a really solid basketball player, but Rock and Atwood have been in and out a little bit.
mm,
And when it's not going, they're out within 3 minutes, and in comes Austin and Scott Grayson.
mm,
And London played like they were prepared for the first two, but they certainly weren't prepared for the second two.
mm,
Because when those two came in, and particularly the energy of it's basically his way of speeding the game up.
mm,
Atwood and Rock are slower players.
mm,
They're more methodical players. They will shoot the ball away when it comes to them. They're rhythm players. Cheshire aren't really about rhythm. Cheshire are more about chaos. Speedy chaos. That's probably the best way of saying it. That's not say it's not thought out, because the best chaos is organized chaos.
mm,
You can play with organized chaos. One, the opposition doesn't know what you're doing, but you do, and you can play at that speed.
mm,
You become a hell of a matchup for anybody. Okay. Now, neither Atwood nor Idle Rock are really what you describe as chaotic players. They're
mm,
quite, as I say, they're careful in their movements, and Scott Grayson and Austin, the absolute opposite.
mm.
They are flying up and down, and confidence guys, and just doing everything that they can. So by changing
And
it,
disruptive as well,
and
defensively.
disruptive, and disruptive, it's just chaos, just
Mm,
agents of chaos. And so by doing that, and then the advantage of their disruption is that they're up the other end very quickly. So you don't, it's a little bit like Bristol, like that. It's not quite as bad as Bristol crowd wise, because you're a little bit, the fans are a little bit further from the court,
mm,
and there's a bunch of 8-year-olds screaming at you.
mm.
It's hard to get wound up with them. But even so, it's loud, and the energy in there gets up quite
It's
quickly.
manic. I think
Manic, yeah.
somebody described it to me
Yeah,
last week.
absolutely. Yeah. Organized mania, organized chaos,
Yeah.
what you want. So you put a team together which kind of does that. And I thought London, they bent a little bit in the first half.
Mm,
ultimately they didn't break, and they didn't break primarily because Rye is still my number one guy in the league, I think. I think he's still the best player in the league, even though just on impacting the game when he's not even impacting the game, if that makes any sense. Um, and Cheshire's mania often doesn't extend to discipline on defense, which meant that they let Briscoe make enough threes to
And
save the game.
Sandy, to be
And
fair,
no, yeah,
Sandy.
yeah, but they didn't let Sandy. That's not a criticism of Cheshire because Sandy's shots are coming from the corner, they're
Mm,
coming from penetration,
mm,
and you defend the penetration, and you're going to say to Sandy, "Okay, you beat us."
yeah,
Yeah, I have a problem with that. The problems I've got are the ones where Briscoe is standing looking at the basket,
yeah,
and the
yeah,
defender hasn't got a hand up,
yeah.
even if he's 3 feet from there. There was one that he shot. He just looked around like, "Oh, this guy's not going to guard me."
Mm,
Did they not know yet? And they're the shots that kill you because, um, he's 6 of 8, but he's already had a 10 3-point game this season.
I think it was 9, but yeah,
Nine,
yeah,
10
yeah.
against Manchester, and so that he's a Pro A player, France Pro A player. If you let him stand there and shoot the ball, he's going to make them.
Mm,
And so, yeah, it was an intriguing first half. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
mm,
Um, uh, I'm I'm on the fence with the reason I talk about the canary in the coal mine with I don't think I'm not talking financially
mm,
with Jordan Taylor. Decker's gone off to Badalona.
mhm.
Obviously they've picked up his salary, so he's playing
For a
Euro.
month.
Yeah, for a month, but who knows?
Who knows? He seemed to do pretty
Um,
well at the weekend.
yeah, Taylor is probably won everything there is to win.
Mm,
It's difficult to know what more he's got to achieve in
mm,
his career. I mean, but he was also a massive kind of credibility thing for this league to have someone like that who's been all around Europe, and we don't know that in this country. The fans in the gym don't know that, but what he's accomplished in Europe,
mm,
is it's not far short of legendary in relation to what he's got. So, up and down to Ellesmere Port and to Ace Kilbride for,
mm,
25 minutes a game, in order to grind out another SLB championship, it's
mm,
probably not on his kind of career path. I'm interested in Buzic. I
mm.
really am.
Yeah, yeah.
Because Buzic um, is similarly legendary, right?
Mm.
We have no idea in this
Yeah,
country,
we do.
right? No idea in this country what kind of career this guy has had,
Yeah,
what
yeah.
he is to Serbian basketball, Balkan basketball, whatever, right? He's gone off. He's won everything with it Partizan. I can't remember Red
Yeah,
Star.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Partisan.
He's won
Yeah.
everything at the highest level. He's known as a winner. He's ended up moving into coaching. He's got a job on Popovic's staff in San
Mm.
Antonio,
Yeah, yeah.
which is about the gold standard,
Yeah. This
right?
is not straightforward, not easy.
He comes back, and he's obviously 777 of in your coach for money. That's what you do. Of course you do.
Mm,
So 777 have thought this is the guy we want. That's fine, brilliant. Why? What's in it for him? Well, he's going to try and win Euro Cup. He's going to have the budget. They're aiming for EuroLeague, right?
mm.
That's the plan. And he's on a 3-year deal, and obviously they can honour his deal um because he's not covered under the salary cap.
Mm.
So Decker, they can't honour his Decker's deal because the league won't allow it, but they can pay coaches whatever you
They
want.
can. They would have to pay the luxury
They have to
tax.
pay a lot of money. Yeah, so yeah, my bad. Yeah, in practical terms,
Mm,
it's impracticable in their view to pay hundreds of thousands of pounds to other teams to allow Sandecker to play.
mm,
Well, that's odd thousands or tens of thousands, whatever. The Bozic, there's no such thing. So I'm looking at Bozic and I'm thinking, in this game, I was perplexed. I mean, the way they guarded Austin in this game was nuts,
mm,
right? I mean, Goodwin is out there like he's 19, I think.
mm. Yeah,
He's
18, 19.
18, 19. He's a young lad. He is out there, um, with he couldn't have been much more of a target if he had a Red Cross painted on his
Mm,
back. So literally they're after him, and he is running out at Austin in the corner, and he's not the only one who did it. And Austin is boom layup, boom layup, boom layup, right? And we've talked about Austin's strengths and Austin's weaknesses. Um, but they played to his weaknesses, they played to his strengths. And I was looking at Bozic and just thinking, well, what's the strategy there? If this was and I was looking thinking, this was a rookie coach, I'd be going through him.
mm.
You're saying that this is as you're putting your young kid and you're giving him the and he's doing the wrong things. You know what's going on. At the end of the game, to be fair, Briscoe guarded him differently. Briscoe stood 8 feet away from him,
Mm,
and then suddenly he slowed down a little bit. And it got me to thinking about Bozic, about what are his motivations? Because you cannot estimate how much you know um, clout or how much um, kudos he has in Eastern Europe,
mm,
right? In EuroLeague teams. There's a rumor in the summer he was going to Paris. Now,
yeah.
I'm not trying to start trouble here. I'm
Yeah.
not, genuinely not. I'm generally just trying to kind of throw stuff out there. But when Decker's not there, if Taylor chooses to go, then is Bozic going to be having the same motivational issues with going to East Kilbride or going here, there, and everywhere? I'll use East Kilbride because it's the furthest away, but
Mm,
it would be the same for Plymouth or whatever, and playing all these games for what is relatively anonymous, in what is relatively, in European terms, an anonymous league,
mm.
right? So when I said canary in the coal mine, that's what I meant.
Okay.
In relation to what is Bozic going to do? And I didn't think in this game the way that they got. He ran his team fine. They run some lovely stuff. He's a hell of a coach. He's clearly a hell of a coach. He knows exactly what he's doing. Um, and he's got enough talent. At the end of the day, he's got the best player in the league in Rye. He's got a France Pro A shooter in Briscoe. He's got two 6'10" guys who are athletic as heck. And if they can't make foul shots, Hadžibegović can make threes and not foul shots,
Mm,
and Delaire can make foul shots and not threes.
mhm,
You may explain that one. And on top of that, he's putting confidence in the young British guys.
mm.
Andy, Adebayo, who's kind of British Nigerian, and he's rolling Goodwin out there, which is fine, and Flood's coming and playing. So he's running his team fine. But I just got in. I was just watching them go up and down and thinking, is this what Peter Bozic is made for? It's 93, 96. And that comes from having a concept of the wider world outside of the SLB. I know we don't talk about the wider world
Yeah,
outside the
yeah, yeah.
SLB, but people have, it is Ian Botham in kind of Serbia.
Mm.
This is a different world. So I'm interested to see how that all plays out. Particularly Ovi's on the bench not playing. Um, I assume must have picked up some form of knock
Injury.
as well. Sorry,
He was injured.
he's injured. Fair enough. Um, so we'll see how that pans out over the season. But if Partizan or you know Badalona or somebody else wanted to coach, then you'd think they'd be knocking on the door.
Mm, mm.
To be blunt. Um,
Well,
so
from back to the game, from
yeah.
3 minutes to go to half time, it's 43-35 to 3 minutes gone in the third quarter. It's 47-59, a 24-4 run by London. Having, as you say, bent but not broken a couple of times in the first half. They stormed ahead early in the third quarter.
Yeah, and in Cheshire, to be fair, they play at such a speed that there are going to be significant vacillations in the score in their games. We already talked about that. They're going to go up and down, and you think at that point that Cheshire are breaking, but Cheshire never really break
Mm,
because they stay true to themselves
mm.
and they keep going the same way. So they don't, the moment that Cheshire slow down, or the moment that they stop shooting those shots and stop playing that way, that's when they will break.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
If you're a team, if you're opposition team, you really want to get them into that kind of slow it down kind of mentality, have them start to doubt the way that they are playing. But when that happens, what Ben does, he just brings in a faster guy,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
and so it was maybe criticism, whatever. So they're constantly trying to kind of grab the game back into their style. And they did actually in this game,
They
they did
did.
actually get it back.
London had to deal with some foul trouble with Hadžibegović and Sandy. And then Kristen, who'd been on the bench in foul trouble in the first half, he came in, had an absolutely ridiculous spell. They cut the gap to 1 point.
Well, he had a fantastic dunk, which sadly we
Yeah.
saw the bottom of his heels because of the cut to the baseline camera at exactly the wrong time again. Pet peeve. And then stole the ball, which we didn't see on the three because they were too busy looking at the back of whatever somebody else's backside, and then shot the three, which we just about saw. So we actually missed the incredible plays that he made. Um, just a lesson, you don't need to see fancy stuff. I just need to see the court. Um, and we saw, and of course, the way it works is 40 seconds later, I see the replay of the dunk in the angle that we should have seen in the first place,
Mm.
whilst something else is going on. Anyway, the clip that one for us, right? Okay. So yes, at this point the gym's kicking off again.
Mm.
And you're thinking Cheshire are going to kind of, pile it on. But they never quite did, and London just made enough shots, and Begovic made two massive 3-point shots.
Mm.
And this game ultimately came down to the fact that Sandy and Begovic went 6 of 8 from the 3-point line.
Yeah.
That's what gave them enough points to win. And they're things that if you're Cheshire, you live with.
Mm.
And what you don't live with, however, is that last one where Skylar decided he couldn't let him shoot another one, ran out at him, fake dunk.
Yeah.
You got to make him make the third one. You got to trust the
Yeah.
numbers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and they didn't quite trust the numbers. And also, as I say, Ryan Briscoe are really good.
Mm.
Briscoe offensively is really, really good.
Mm. Well, it's 81-81 with 4:40 to go. Briscoe then had 4 points. Rye two free throws to 81-87, and London
Yeah,
actually maintained a two-shot cushion to the end.
yeah. There's a wider point about this as well.
Mm.
Atwood hardly played. He played about 8 minutes before the fourth quarter. The same last week. He came in midway through the fourth quarter, the game against Sheffield,
Mm.
and he's totally out of rhythm. I think in this game he came in middle of the fourth quarter, missed 3 shots.
Mm.
That was a talented scorer. But if you remember at Plymouth last year, he was playing a lot.
Mm.
He was getting into the rhythm of the game. He was getting to his spots. He's a little bit like Alan Aikens in that he kind of finds where he's got to be and works out what he's got to do and backs people down or steps outside. He was in no rhythm at all.
Mm.
And he missed 3 shots. And in a 93-97 game, I think he missed a corner one, he missed a post up, which didn't come close. Kind of those 3 or 4 possessions, because they are slower possessions as well. As that game gets close, the 5 minutes to go, Cheshire want to keep flying up and down. He didn't quite fit what they were doing. And Ben's trying to get him in there to try and get him back, get something. But it may be that he's a guy that you'd have to play a lot, or you don't play him much at all.
Mm.
Yeah, as opposed to kind of playing around with his minutes. As opposed to Holden, for instance, Holden played 38 minutes in this game, so he's not, so you can't play. But Cheshire have such a proliferation of wings that sometimes it's difficult to work out which ones are gonna play. But yeah, London were a little bit more precise in their offense. Let's say the big guy made some shots. They kind of knew where the ball was going a little bit more, and Rye is just really good in crunch time. There's a reason Rye's won so many games.
The stat for me was actually Cheshire's 3-point shooting. They were 6 of 19, and it was the 19 rather
Yeah.
than the six. So they averaged 28 a game. They lead the league in 3-point attempts, and London only gave them 19.
Yeah, and now there's two things about that. Firstly, London are really good and really long. And in fact, London have the perfect team to defend Cheshire because you have Adebayo, who's probably the outstanding perimeter defender in the league at the moment.
Mm.
Coro's probably close, but he plays both ends, so it's difficult. I'm trying to think who else. Difficult. Jackson maybe, but Jackson again has got a lot of stuff to do with Leicester's offense. But Adebayo, if you're talking defensive
Mm.
specialist, and Jamel's not played much this year, so defensive specialist, you would say it's Adebayo. He's built, he doesn't move.
Mm.
He's little, but if you go into him in the post, he doesn't move. So he's got the size and kind of the quickness and body to defend Holden, which not many people have in this league. Holden's leading the league in offensive rebounds, which is remarkable if you think about it. He's a guard,
Mm.
right? So they've got that. They've then got kind of a rotating set of bodies because you can put Sandy on him again, 6'6", athletic, committed, will do the job. You've got Rye you can put on him as well if you need to. And half the job with Holden, with stopping Cheshire's threes, is stopping Holden.
Mm.
Then the other half is not letting them get out in transition as much, right? They didn't. They did a good job, I thought, of controlling offensively and getting enough good shots whereby Cheshire didn't get out much in transition. And the third thing that figures into that number as well is that they changed with Austin on the court for a long time.
Mm.
If Austin's playing 30 minutes a game, they're not going to put up as many threes. And that's kind of the the plus minus you get with Austin. He gives you all that energy. He gives you the 20 points at the rim. He played great in this game. He did everything he was meant to do. Okay. But it also takes you away from having somebody spotting up in the corner. There were a couple of times where Holden looked to make a pass and Austin's cutting for a rebound.
Mm,
You know, so it changes a little bit what you do. But overall, no, that part of the game plan I think was fine. I think it probably just overemphasized it on Austin
mm,
because they did a good job of taking threes away. And apart from the one slip screen one that Austin got Skylar White on near the end, they basically took Skylar out of it. A lot of that, though, again, is I'm talking through a lot here. Holden making all those cross-court passes.
mm.
It's harder to do when the guy guarding you is 6'5" and the two guys in the middle are 6'10".
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know, and that's the space on the court is harder. It's harder to get the passes through. And yeah, that probably was a team that matches up very well with Cheshire. I still think the game was kind of there for Cheshire. And I still think that because you've got to score 95 in that gym to beat them.
Mm,
And they only just got there, and that's primarily because Hadzibegovic made some shots and
yeah,
because they let Brisker get two or three too many.
yeah, yeah,
You know, it was a good game. It was a fun
yeah.
game.
It was. Yeah,
And really good afternoon of basketball,
yeah.
actually.
It
Probably
was.
the worst game was the one I enjoyed the most in Glasgow. But the other three were really intriguing games of basketball.
Scott Grayson, 28 points. Austin, 19. Christian, 18. Brisker, 6 of 8 threes for 27 points. Hadzibegovic, 8 of 10 from the floor for 20 points and 7 rebounds. Sandy, 4 of 6 from 3-point range for 18 points, although minus 13, which is the weirdness of the plus minus, isn't it?
Particularly with Cheshire.
Mm.
Just on the other one, if you're in the court in the wrong time for one run, you're stuffed.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, tough.
I finally broken and printed the league table. I wasn't going to, and then I put it in at the end. So I'll read it out. It's still too early. It's pointless, but I'll read it out anyway. London 5-0, top of the table. Newcastle in second place. I printed it out for you, Dave. Really, 3-1. Sheffield 3-2. Cheshire 2-1, and then Bristol, Leicester, and Surrey all 1-2. Manchester 0-2, and Caledonia 0-4.
Yeah, international break now, so we'll see how the GB guys go to the Copper Box against Greece.
Sold out, I've read today. That's good to see.
Greece, I mean, I've waffled on for years about how we should have games in London
Mm,
because it's easier to get the press involved, it's easier to get the TV involved.
mm,
Um, and now the concern, of course, is that there'll be 6,000 Greeks there.
yeah, that is the
You
worry.
know,
Yeah.
that is the biggest deal. The one advantage of having the Latvians in Newcastle was that you only give them 300 seats and see,
Mm,
and that's it because we only got 3,000 seats in the gym. Um, but these should be money-making opportunities. This is where, these, I know they've got to deal with court side and they'll be on court side, but, I've never understood how I can be bombarded with information about our netball team playing live in Jamaica. I mean,
mm,
frankly, who cares?
mm,
Says the misogynist. And then you can't even find on the BBC,
mm,
by the way, on the BBC,
mm,
and I'm getting notifications on my phone about it, and you can't find a basketball game played right in London, 20 minutes away from where Television Centre used to be.
mm.
Um,
To be fair to the netball, the two games this weekend were both in Manchester. It's the next two that are going to
oh,
be in
sorry,
London.
my fault. But that shows how much interest I
Yeah,
paid.
yeah, yeah.
But even so,
And it's number 2 in the world versus number 4 in the world because there's only 4 teams in the world.
yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a cheap shot. I get that, and I don't mean to be disrespectful, but it's more to demonstrate the imbalance of
Yeah, yeah, no, I
we
totally
don't
agree.
get than what they
Yeah,
do
yeah,
get,
yeah, yeah.
and I've never figured out why that is. Whether it is simply that the administrators we have done everything they can and are just being stonewalled, or whether, to be frank, our administrators have been asleep on the job
Mm.
of getting
The
those
the
games.
latter may be true, but I think even if it wasn't true, even if the former were true, I think there's a lot of cultural biases to overcome, and
Well, yeah, I kind of
I
get
think
that.
ice hockey would share that view as well.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think ice hockey is exactly the same because you just don't see that
Mm,
either from a GB perspective, from a Britain perspective. And frankly, it's just wrong. But it needs there must be a solution. I'm a great believer in the fact there must be a solution to that. So, I mean, if nothing else, it's a great human interest story with Stootle, who's playing in Caledonia on a Sunday, going to London for a camp on Monday, coaching the GB national team on Thursday, then going to Athens or wherever they're playing on Sunday, and then flying to Warsaw on Monday to coach the Eagles on Tuesday.
Mm, mm,
I mean, in Warsaw before coming back and playing Cheshire on the Friday. Good luck. But that's just what's just one story.
mm.
No, it just strikes me as just so disrespectful of our sport and really, really frustrating. But that's good. In relation to the league, well, as you say, it's too early. They've got to play each other 4 times.
Yeah, yeah,
Outside of Newcastle sweeping Caledonia, I've got no idea what's going to happen.
yeah, yeah. They've got to play each other another 4 times in Caledonia and Newcastle.
Yeah,
So
eventually, yeah. I mean, we're gonna move the court 10 miles north every time, see if they've got a chance. Maybe they should move back to the quarry. They might have a chance. Sorry, but the old wounds run deep with Newcastle and
yeah.
Glasgow in Scotland. Um, but yeah, it's really good. I'm interested to see what kind of personnel stuff happens. I think there are a couple of teams. Newcastle have kind of made their move with James, who
Mm,
has a good resume, 6'5" kind of guard, played in Italy and Venezuela, etc. Obviously they've been struggling with buying him, so you have to work out what's happening with him. Caledonia, you know, something needs to happen. Um, London, will they replace Taylor? They've got plenty of import spots if they want them. Um, Leicester, I think they need a scorer. Um, Surrey, I don't know if they've got the resources at Surrey to replace. I think they are probably one. Again, they're probably a Paddy at Wang style athlete
mm,
stout short of what they need.
mm,
Um, Bristol need to get healthy, and obviously need to sort out Tennyson's girlfriend. And Sheffield, I think, can be looking pretty good for themselves at the moment.
yeah, yeah,
I think Sheffield would be pretty comfortable where they're at. They've got the talent there. They've just got to gel.
yeah.
They've got to figure a few things out, but they've got to gel. And that just leaves
Manchester.
Manchester, and God knows, you tell me.
Yeah.
Oh, and I'm still smiling at the thought of Isaiah Moore waving the coach off at Newcastle Arena
Mm,
in a game that didn't matter,
mm,
and then ending up being 0-2 in the regular season in games that do.
mm,
It's just I just think, yeah, I think they have. I mean, Ali only played 13 minutes in that
mm.
game at Bristol. He's a good player. That's an
Yeah,
overtime game,
yeah, yeah,
right? So he played 13 minutes. He's not done anything wrong playing for them. Um, 30 minutes in an overtime game, and you're looking and thinking, is that Manchester unit sustainable? Do they need? I think they need a Thomas Edwards or someone like that.
mm,
Obviously, a better level of Zach Jackson.
mm,
They need a stabilizer. Um, and the hard hat guy is just gonna do his job and to figure it all out. And to be fair to them, they haven't had any games either. They've been off for 2 weeks, twice now. They've had 2 week gaps.
yeah, yeah,
Now they've got another 2 week gap.
yeah,
So that is tough, to be fair. That's so it's being hypercritical because they haven't had the chance to play that many games. But I think they're going to play some very entertaining games this year,
mm,
Manchester.
mm.
But they've got a bit to think about.
They're gonna
So
win
that's what
some.
interests me, because this is a point of the year whereby every team, if you have to decide where you're competing.
Mm,
Are you competing for respectability? Or are you going to go chips in? Because the way the system works is that players get paid per month. Yeah. Um, and if you're playing a guy for 9 months from August, it's a lot easier to pay a slightly lesser wage than it is if you're paying them for 5 months.
mm,
Right? 5 months, you can spend money in 5 months that wouldn't get you if you can get a quality of player for 5 months that you can't get for 9 months,
mm,
because the players will generally play it will not know what they're getting paid per month because they're playing in leagues all around the world. So it's not a question of how much am I getting paid in total, it's how much am I getting paid per month. So this is the time of the season whereby you can put your chips in and you can find yourself in a relatively high level player for not that much gross money in total.
mm,
Um, and on top of that, because players are paid netto, or as famous footballer once said, I played net.
Mm.
The clubs pay the tax on top. All they're interested in is in net. If they're coming from out of the country and they're only here for 5 months, their tax on top is going to be very limited because they have a tax threshold of 13,000 or whatever it is pounds a year. So you can pay a guy to 13,000, pay no tax on it.
Mm.
Whereas if you paid that guy the same over 9 months, that might be 20,000 with another £8,000 tax on top. So you're paying twice as much. So clubs, there's a kind of inefficiency in clubs signing guys at this point, and it all really depends on you want a player who's in shape, because if you don't get a player who's in shape in the middle of the season, you might never, it might be worthless signing them.
Yeah, yeah.
But then you've got to look at what leagues are finishing around the world as to where you can get them from, because there are leagues which go everywhere.
Mm.
Be it the Australian second division, or be it Puerto Rico, or a Newcastle's guy came from Venezuela, and you've got to
Or
try and
a guy like Clay came from
he came from
ours.
PAOK, yeah, PAOK, because he was probably just over recruited for that league,
Mm.
and finding those guys that can make the difference, because you're going to play a lot of games, and ultimately you can only coach your way to winning so many.
Mm.
If you've got a flaw or a need, you kind of need to address it now. And as I say, it all depends on what you're competing for. If you're competing for the top, if you're competing to be respectable, or if you're just competing to get through the season, and not go bust. And all of those things are manageable. All those things are perfectly appropriate considerations,
Mm.
because most of the clubs are living hand to mouth. Most of the clubs are spending what they earn.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we'll see. We'll see what moves are made. And that's always been interested in that stuff.
Mm. So as Dave mentioned, it is International Week. So I think we'll take next week off because I'm doing a
Yeah,
game at the same
that's
time
fine.
anyway. I'm doing
Yeah.
some of the international games, and if there's anything super exciting, we'll pick it up on the other side of the international break on the GB if needs be.
Yeah, well, we don't even know who's on the roster yet, do we? So, I think, I think, I think the, I don't think Miles is in the squad, this time, and the understanding I have is that the reason Miles is in the squad is because he's still playing in the Mexican playoffs,
Okay.
and the reason he's still playing in the Mexican playoffs is because Jay Sean went off for about 30 points in the game.
Okay.
So Jay Sean is still haunting us. Went off in an elimination game for
Was he
about 30
flexing
points.
afterwards? That's
So
the
they didn't, yeah,
question.
flexing afterwards. So they didn't get knocked out, in which case Miles would have come back. So so we'll see. We'll see what kind of team. It's a tough gig to put out a
Which is
GP
tough.
on,
Yeah, yeah.
on 3 days. But good luck to them.
Indeed. So we'll be back in 2 weeks. It'll probably be a Monday again. We don't look that far ahead, but we'll do it all over again and enjoy Great Britain when you find it on the BBC Red button or wherever it lives.
I think it'll be a purple button, probably.
Purple
It'll be
button.
below the red button, magenta button, the one that nobody's ever told about. The invisible button.
Yeah. So we'll be back in a couple of weeks. Have a good time in the meantime. Goodbye.
Bye, guys.